Hello, friends. Welcome to today's pre-show for our 2012-02. That's our Core 2 A+ study group. I've got all new questions ready for you. I think I've got them ready for you. That's always the question, isn't it? That's the one I keep asking myself is, am I ready for the live stream? I guess that's really what this first 10 minutes is about. We really get started about 10 minutes from now. This is what we call our pre-show. Hello, chat room. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm watching people check in right here at our digital map. You can put your virtual pin cushion in the digital map. Let us know where you are and what's going on. That's a good start for today. We've got, of course, all new questions for you for the Core 2 exam. So I have got all new questions for the first hour, and then you can submit questions at any time at all during this entire process. If the list is, it's the list right here on your screen, right behind me, professormesser.com/QA. That's the URL. And that will allow you not only to answer questions in the first hour, to submit questions for the second hour as well. So you've got two great hits, one URL. Could not be better than that. Hope everybody's doing good. We've got a lot to go through today. I need to check and make sure cameras are good. You know, I don't have my monitor in. Usually I have a monitor in the ear here that you don't normally see, but I just didn't put it in. There's just too many wires. There's just too much. There's too much going on in my world where I had to take all of the wires, take them all apart. Where are they going? Going over here. Put the wires into the chair. This is why. This is why right here. There we go. Now we're all taken care of. Now we've got a monitor we can put in. I don't know that I need the monitor. I can see the audio. You can see the audio too that's up here on the audio mark, but I just never know if anything else leaks in there. If anything comes from the computer, I forget to turn the audio input off, which I have. It's one of those things where you just have to keep checking the door. It's a little bit that way. Got to keep checking the stove, make sure it's not turned on. Yeah, it's a little bit of that. But I don't want to have to go, an hour through the live stream, and then at the end of the hour, the people would say, there was a noise that was, I thought if I just had my monitors in, I would have heard the noise. Because I'm hearing what you're hearing, effectively, sort of. I hear more than you hear, but I'm hearing what you hear along with other things as well. There you go. See how simple that explanation was? I made it so difficult. Let's see how we're doing here. Oh, that's not good. We are going to need to get something else to drink before this happens. So we will very quickly do this, and I'm going to be right back. Don't go anywhere. Stay right where you are. Okay, let's now take that thing off of there again. There we go. So much better. So much better. Hope everybody's doing well. I did not have my liquid beverage. We have to have something here because otherwise it would just be awful. Because about 15 minutes in, you start talking like this. Nobody likes that. And now I've got garbage here that goes there. All right. I think we're in pretty good shape, though. Let's check all 4 of our monitor. Click, click, click. There it goes. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So our video inputs are good. Our video outputs are good. I had to take the audio monitor out of my ear. It's the out-of-ear monitor. Now it's an in-ear monitor. See how that works? Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Oh, and I made a mess of my wires again, which seems to be a very common thing for me. Now, you'll notice I don't use Bluetooth for this. It's all wired up for my headphones for a number of reasons. One is I never have to worry about charging a battery, which I like. And whenever you do anything networking related, whether it's data, Bluetooth, anything that's going over a wireless connection, there tends to be a bit of latency. There tends to be a little bit of a lag. And even here, I hear a little bit of a lag because of the way that I am talking and monitoring and processing when it gets to me. So it is a nanosecond behind, but it's not bad. But when you go to Bluetooth or you go to some other wireless connection, you tend to have a much longer lag. It can be 5 milliseconds, 10 milliseconds, which to you probably won't make a difference. And I can adjust the video so it's matched up with the audio. But it is noticeable in my ear. So that's the problem, is I don't want to have echoing when you're talking, because if I monitored the link that you are seeing, that happens like 5, 6, 7 seconds, 10 seconds after I say it. So I'd never be able to monitor that. So I try to monitor right here at the very beginning of the audio chain. Granted, I'm not hearing exactly the same thing that you are hearing, but there's only another extra step or 2 before that happens. We got about 3 minutes until we get started. This is not the live stream. I do get emails from time to time. People say, that was kind of boring. It was just you sitting there for the back of your head. No, wait, there's actual things that will happen at the top of the hour. Let's turn on some air conditioning. A little warm here in Central Florida. For those of you doing this, it is super, super warm here in Central Florida this week. So it is something. It's very, very warm. The summers here are always hot during the day, and then the rains come in, and then there's thunderstorms, and then it rains, and then the day is over. It's a normal summer in Florida. That's the way we do it. That's perfectly acceptable. That is exactly what we would expect, in fact. And it tends to be very common. It's always nice when you kind of get into the fall time frame and you're not getting that daily thunderstorm every day. Because I have to completely shut down the studio when that happens, when it's coming over, because there's a lot of lightning, a lot of potential for problems. So everything here gets turned off, powered down. I physically disconnect it from power and physically disconnect it from the network. So I've designed, I think I mentioned this in the last live stream, I've designed this desk, which has everything in it. It has my audio switcher, which is down here on the left. It has my recording, which is down here on the right. There's more. There's a switch that's in here. There's more things that are in here. And I've designed this so that I can completely disconnect it from the world so that nothing can affect it. Can you tell I've been hit by lightning a couple of times? If you live in Florida, you're probably very aware. One very bad, the last really bad hit I had, hit a tree in the front of the house. There was of all things, a telephone line going underneath the tree in the ground. It hit the telephone line. The telephone line went into the house. So the lightning went into the house. The telephone line was connected to a bunch of other systems, modems and other things that were connected to computing equipment. That got into the power of the house, and then everything that was connected to power was burned up pretty good. So anything electronic in the house, imagine every electronic thing in your house suddenly being blown apart. Just boom, poof, it's gone. That's what happened to me. I could not imagine doing that in my studio. Luckily, my studio was not connected at the time, and it wasn't too much of that. But it was a good warning and something I did not want to do again. We're getting close to the top of the hour, which means it's time to do this, isn't it? Let's get our healthy stream. Okay, chat is up. These look good. That went to 12. That means we can start our keynote. which is what you end up seeing. We want a green light. We got it. That made a thing. That did a step. Okay. Look at that. And he immediately says, no, thank you. No, I'm good. We don't need to do that. Yes, you do. And here's how you're going to do it. There you go. We will make you. I think it's time to do a live stream, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the July 2026 Professor Messer A+ Core 2 study group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the official CompTIA exam objectives. We get to see just how much of that information you might know. We have a whole lot to go through today. Of course, we have all brand new questions for you, and we will absolutely move into doing Q&A in the first hour. And then, of course, I will take your questions in the second hour. So you will want to have the link to do both of those things. And here it is. If you'd like to join us, you can go to that link, professormesser.com/QA. Just pop open a new browser window. If you're on the live page of professormesser.com, you just scroll down. It's on the same page. You can go there and put in your name, and now you'll be able to answer any questions we ask of you during this first hour. That's also the URL that you can use to submit questions for the second hour. So if you have questions about the CompTIA certifications, IT certifications in general, things about the IT as a career, anything that may be technologically associated, or really just any question you would like, you can submit those using that same URL, professormesser.com/QA. So let's test it and see if it works. We will test it with a question that we had in a previous study group. So really, this is the only time that you're going to see a repeat in our study group questions. So our rewind question of the month is the one that we have. In fact, I don't have it on my screen here, so I'm going to show it to you on a different screen that we have here. Before I give you the question and the answers, please remember our standing rule for the study group is please do not put your answers into the chat room. Please do not put any answers into the chat room, any hints, anything relating to the question. We want to always go to the URL, professormesser.com/QA. That's the one where you can answer the question. And our question is this one. It asks, a network technician is setting up a new wireless network for corporate headquarters. Why would the technician choose enterprise mode instead of personal mode for this setup? Would it be that it increases the wireless encryption strength? It allows for the use of more than one access point. It enables WPA3 single sign-on, SSO. It enables 802.1q trunking from the access point, or it provides individual user account management. One of those is the right answer. If you think you know the right answer, no answers in the chat room, please. Instead, use the URL on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and we will come back to this question in just a moment. So the things that we are doing in our live stream today are the things that we do in every study group, except, of course, we have brand new questions in every study group that we do. But we're not here all the time performing a live stream, doing the Q&A. Wouldn't that be nice, though? Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, that's the case. If you would like to follow us when we're not live, you can, of course, check out our entire A+ course available on YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube. We do have a daily pop quiz question that you can try out. We submit those to you via email, or you can find them on X, on Instagram, or on LinkedIn. And of course, if you'd like to find us on Facebook, you got to follow the same links on professormesser.com/YouTube, professormesser.com/Facebook, professormesser.com/Instagram. You get the idea. It's the same prefix every time. Just put on the end of that the name of the social media that you would like to find us on. And if we're there, you will find us at that location. If we're not there, well, then I guess you won't, or you'll get a 404 or something like that. Also, unlike our study group from 2 days ago, I will endeavor to give you a super secret code word of the month that you can use to earn a continuing education unit credit. If you use these CEUs to renew your certification, this might be something that can help you. And just listen in at some point in this first hour, and let's see if I give you one, which is really my biggest challenge today, is figuring out that piece. Today, we are talking about topics and questions that come directly from the Core 2 of the A+ exam series. There are two separate exams for the A+. You have to pass the 220-1201 exam, And then you also have to pass the 220-1202 exam. Everything we're talking about today is for that 1202 version. Both of these exams were released on March the 25th of 2025, which means that we estimate that these exams will be retired somewhere around September of 2028. Well, that is plenty of time to study as we sit here in July of 2026. So you're exactly the right place. All of your study materials you see here are exactly what you should be studying. And make sure that everything that you have, that's maybe if you have a book or labs that you're working on, make sure they are also marked as the 220-1202. These exams themselves have an interesting scale that they grade you on. It's on a scale between 100 and 900. And to pass the 1202 exam, you need to earn a 700. So you've got a few things to learn or think about, certainly a lot of exam objectives to learn to be able to get that particular value, that 700 score. That's what you're looking for to get a passing grade on that exam. Once you pass the exam, none of this information about release dates or retirement dates or anything else applies to you. Once you're certified, you are certified, and it really doesn't matter what they do to the exams after that. And you're certified for 3 years. You can, of course, renew that and get another 3 years and renew it again and get another 3 years and so on. And that's usually what people will do. You only take the exams one time, and then you can simply renew them to maintain that certification through the years. Today, we're talking about the 1202 exam, the Core 2 exam. The topics we will discuss today will be operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. Hopefully, we have a question that covers each one of those domains that we'll go through today. I think we'll be able to make that happen. Also, keep in mind that we have the replay of this immediately available after we're done on YouTube. And I also upload an audio only that I distribute in a podcast format. You can find that at professormesser.com/podcast or your favorite podcast index. We also have this available on a number of streaming services. So if you're on Spotify, for example, you can go to professormesser.com on Spotify, or just look for Professor Messer. Search for that on Spotify. You'll find all of our podcasts there as well. It's an easy way to keep up with what we're doing here and to catch a live stream if you happen to miss one. You'll also notice about a day after we're done, our YouTube video description will be almost magically populated with everything that we did today and a timestamp. That is not anything artificial or automatic. This is something that we do manually to make sure that we're giving you an exact, accurate representation of the information you need to help you study. My marketing manager, Lori, is watching this on the replay. Hey, Lori. She's going through and putting these in for you. So if you're someone who's been able to use those, you like having those available, make sure you give Lori a heart in the chat. Let her know that you appreciate the work that she is doing. Well, she's having to listen to me for 2 hours. So she's really doing the hard work. You don't get any extra pay for that, though. That's just the way it works. You just have to put up with it and deal with it. Hopefully it's not that bad. We also have our Discord chat. Come on over to Discord. That'll be fun. We have thousands of people on our Discord server now that are studying for their A+, their Network+, their Security Plus exams, and they are there able to chat with others. They can open a study room whenever they would like, invite other people to the study room, and it's just a nice way to study with other people that are working towards the same goal. We even sometimes have some interesting conversations about technology as well. That's usually where I am when I'm not doing one of these live streams. We'd like to see you over there as well. Join us at professormesser.com/Discord. At some point, you will need to take your A+ exams. If you are in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory, you can get those exams at a discount over what you would pay on the official CompTIA website. We've been a CompTIA Platinum partner for years, and thankfully, CompTIA allows us to offer these discounts to you. That way you can save a little bit of money as you're preparing for your exams. You can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Not only do you get your voucher at a discount, exactly the same vouchers you would be able to get on the CompTIA website, here are another bonus you get that you can't get on the CompTIA website is a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook that I wrote that puts the tips and tricks that I use for studying and tips and tricks and strategies I use during the exam itself to perhaps get me a few extra points. That is free when you order your voucher on the Professor Messer website. We don't sell this book. You can only get it with the purchase of a voucher or the purchase of one of our success bundles. Relatively exclusive. Find out more on our website at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question I asked you earlier, and let's see how you did. The question asks, a network technician is setting up a new wireless network for corporate headquarters. Why would the technician choose enterprise mode instead of personal mode for this setup? Does it increase the wireless encryption strength? It allows for the use of more than one access point. It enables WPA3 single sign-on. It enables 802.1q trunking from the access point, or it provides individual user account management. Let's close our poll and see how we did. And it's a bit of a rainbow, which interestingly enough is what we got last month as well. We have 38% of you that say it provides individual user account management, and then effectively a four-way tie for second place. 16% say increase the wireless encryption strength. 16% say allows for the use of more than one access point. 16% say it enables WPA3 single sign-on. And close to 16% at 14% say it enables 802.1q trunking from the access point. We were so close. Let's do better next time. We could do 416 right there. Sure. We need to work on that. Well, if we go with the plurality of you that said it provides an individual user account management, then we would be correct. That is exactly what the enterprise security mode allows us to do. At home, you have probably set up security modes on your wireless devices, your wireless router. And I think at home, most of our configurations will be what's called a personal configuration. You might see that also mentioned as a PSK. That stands for pre-shared key. That's a single key that you decide on, and that's how most people have set up their homes. When somebody visits and they say, can I get on your wireless network? Oh yeah, here's the password. Here's the key. Here's the code you need to gain access to our wireless network, and everybody gets the same code. Now, as you can imagine, on an enterprise network, that's not how you'd like to handle security. You don't want to hand out one code, and then that code could be given to other people. That code could be used by people who've already left the company. It's not very secure at all. So in an enterprise environment, we enable enterprise functionality, which may also see listed as 802.1x functionality. 802.1x, another term for that is network access control, or NAC. Network access control allows us to set tighter controls over the access to the network, and it requires that everyone use their individual username and password to be able to gain access. This means that we don't share keys. Nobody gets the same key to log into the wireless network. Instead, we will use the enterprise mode, and we will authenticate to a centralized user database such as Kerberos or LDAP or any of the others. Radius, there's plenty of options out there for centralized account management. And that's exactly what the answer is here, and the one that 38% of you chose. It provides individual user account management. That is the enterprise mode, has a number of capabilities with it. Enterprise mode does not increase wireless encryption strength. We can use more than one access point in all modes of wireless access points. You don't have to be in enterprise mode. You could be pre-shared key and have more than one access point. In fact, that's how I've got my home set up right now. It does not have anything to do with single sign-on, and WPA3 doesn't have anything to do with single sign-on. So that was sort of a nonsense answer to have in that mode. That is not the correct answer. And having the enterprise mode has nothing to do with .1q trunking. .1q trunking is a way to have a single link, a single physical link between switches, and still be able to segment different VLANs through that single physical link. It has, in fact, nothing to do with the wireless network. In this case, the only answer that makes any sense, and the one that is functionally correct, is that it provides individual user account management. That is exactly the answer we were looking for, and that's the one that 38% of you chose. Well, that is the last question that you will get today that you've seen before. Everything from this point on are brand new questions. To that end, one of the things that you've probably seen before in our live streams is that the very first new question of every month, we don't give you a multiple choice question. We give you a performance-based question. There's two different types of questions that you might get, or two different categories of questions you might get on your exam. One is multiple choice. That's the one we just did. That is a very common type of question that I think many of us are very familiar with, where you're asked a question and then you have a number of choices that you can select from. And these multiple choices you can select from may allow you to get the answer right, even if you didn't really know the answer. For example, here we had 5 different answers that we could have chosen from. For these 5 different answers, I could have guessed the last one. So I had a 20% chance of getting that question right, even if I didn't have any knowledge of what the correct answer actually was. On your exam, the odds are even better because it's 4 separate questions you commonly get, and that makes it 25% chance. A quarter of the time you'll get that one absolutely correct, even if you just guessed at it. Well, CompTIA wants to make things a little bit more challenging for you. So they have another style of question you will get at the very beginning of your exam. You'll get probably a handful or so of these. So you'll get 5 or so questions that are not multiple choice questions. CompTIA refers to these as performance-based questions. Performance-based questions are anything that's not multiple choice. Fill in the blank, a matching question, a drag and drop question, selecting things from a pull-down menu, typing things in at a command prompt. Any other way to ask a question is what a performance-based question is. It has a very broad definition, admittedly. Another thing that's important to keep in mind, though, because people always show up in our chat and they say, how do I study for performance-based questions? Well, you study the same way you study for multiple choice questions. You're not spending time trying to figure out the strategies of whether you pick A, B, C, or D. You're trying to determine what the correct answer is for the question and scenario that's posed for you. And the same thing occurs for performance-based questions. You don't study the question type, you study the content. So as long as you know your official CompTIA exam objectives, you're going to do just fine on your performance-based questions. After all, it's not how they ask the question, it's how much of the answer you happen to know. So I have for you, of course, today, a brand new performance-based question. Why don't we start it now instead of listen to me talk and talk and talk and talk? Here's our question. This is a bit of a fill-in-the-blank question, and we'll talk more about what you might see on the exam. But here is the question I have for you. A help desk technician is reviewing several tickets from users who report unusual workstation behavior. For each ticket, describe the most likely malware type. So I have 4 different descriptions here that came in on help desk tickets. And I want you to tell me what type of malware do you think that is? Notice I don't have anything to choose from here. There's no pull-down menus. There's no matching in this view. Normally on the exam, you would have some type of matching or you would have a huge list that you could pull from. Not on this, though. I'm making it a little bit harder for you than what you might get on the actual exam. Let's go through all 4 of these descriptions and maybe a type of malware will immediately come to mind. The first one is a user opened an email attachment labeled updated invoice. Minutes later, all documents on the workstation were renamed with a new extension and a message demanded payment to recover the files. What type of malware does that best describe? Next on our list, and of course, as always, we have our link at the bottom of the screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We want to put our answer in at that link at professormesser.com/QA. The next ticket that we got had this description that said, a computer is running extremely slowly, the CPU usage remains near 100% while idle, and the fan runs constantly. Investigation shows an unknown process consuming resources in the background. What type of malware would best describe that one? And I think there may be 2 or 3 that you could put into that list, but there's really one that I think fits very, very well for that description. Next on our list, a user reports frequent browser pop-ups and unwanted browser search redirects after installing a, quote, free PDF converter. The application appears in programs and features, but the user does not remember intentionally approving all of its bundled components. What type of malware is that? And that does not describe an antivirus software. There's a different kind of malware. We're talking about your antivirus software is not malware. As badly as they develop it and program it, it's still not malware. But that is something. That's some type of malware. What type of malware is it? And lastly, a user downloaded what appears to be a legitimate video codec from an unfamiliar website. After installation, the system created an unauthorized admin account and began connecting to an external command and control server. What type of malware would best describe that one? Admittedly, this is a bit of a challenging question because I didn't give you a list of options. On your exam, you could expect that there might be a list of options or a list of pull downs that you could select from. What they commonly do on the exam, however, is they don't give you 4 separate options to choose from. They'll give you 10 separate options, and you still have to find the right 4. So they still make it a bit more challenging, and I guess we could have done that here, but I think I ran out of room on the screen. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, where would I put all of that? As these questions get more complex, as they get more involved and detailed, I try to put as many different nuanced challenges for you that at least try to match some of the challenges you would see on an actual exam, which admittedly is somewhat difficult to do on a static page, but I think we do a pretty good job of giving you the flavor. Because you could think on this one, these might just be a blank with a pull down menu in it, and then you select from the pull down. Or you might have a list to pull from and you can drag it and drop it into place. So just because we're looking at this one as sort of a matching or a fill in the blank, on your actual exam, it might show you the options in many different ways. So a very good example of how it's not about how the question is asked, it's do you know the content? Because if you know the content, it doesn't matter how the question is asked. So let's go through these one at a time, and let's see what I think the answer is, and let's see what you think the answer might be. The first ticket we have is a user opened an email attachment labeled updated invoice. Minutes later, all documents on the workstation were renamed with a new extension, and a message demanded payment to recover the files. This has not happened to me before, but I can only imagine how that would feel when you first see this message pop up that says your data is no longer available to you. Now you have to pay a ransom. And that, of course, would be ransomware. That's the best description for ransomware. Is it's now encrypted everything on your computer, and the only way to get it back is to pay someone to get it back for you, to give you the key that would allow you to decrypt all of that information. Hopefully, you followed our recommendations in our video series, and you already have a backup. So you can go to your backup from yesterday, restore your backup, and you won't have to pay anybody anything. This becomes a little bit more challenging in an enterprise environment because they will tell you, you might have a backup, you won't pay us for that, but then we'll put all of the data that we downloaded out on the internet for everyone to see. So the bad guys have gotten a little bit more intelligent about how they go through this process, but that certainly describes ransomware. The next one of these help desk tickets, the description is a computer's running extremely slowly. The CPU usage remains near 100% while idle, and the fans run constantly. Investigation shows an unknown process consuming resources in the background. This one I have run into before. This is one I ran into by visiting a website that I had not visited before, and suddenly all of the metrics on my system, all of the resources went crazy. CPU utilization went through the roof. And obviously the system became relatively sluggish when that happened because I had run across some JavaScript that was mining for cryptocurrency. And as we're aware, many forms of cryptocurrency require some type of proof of work. That proof of work requires some type of CPU utilization, very often extensive CPU utilization as it goes through its work, its mathematical calculations. And when that happens, every resource on your computer begins to slow down because a lot of the malware that you'll find that does crypto mining doesn't really lay low. It really puts it at the highest utilization on your computer. And that's something that makes you no money, but certainly is using your resources so that someone else can help mine for that cryptocurrency. The next ticket that we want to look at is this one that says, a user reports frequent browser pop-ups and unwanted browser search redirects after installing a, quote, free PDF converter. This has got to be a good one, right? The application appears in programs and features, but the user does not remember intentionally approving all of its bundled resources and components. Well, we know why, because usually it's a click, 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 click all the way through. And unfortunately, the default for this type of malware is to automatically allow those to be installed. And if you're not paying attention, it will simply install everything that is bundled with it. In that particular case, a very broad category of software that isn't really harming your system. You can easily see that it's there in programs and features. You clearly asked for it to be installed because it is installed on your system, but it may not be something that you really want on your system. We refer to this very broadly as a potentially unwanted program, a PUP, a PUP. The potentially unwanted program, almost every time I've seen a potentially unwanted program, it has been very intentional. It is an intentional unwanted program. So there's no potential involved with that scenario. But in this case, it's a very broad term, although we could even think it here, free PDF converter, we could even think that that may be a different type of malware as well. One that might be best described as a user downloaded what appeared to be a legitimate video codec from an unfamiliar website. After installation, the system created an unauthorized admin account and began connecting to an external command and control server. So this is a little bit different than the last question. In the last question, the user had this program that was installed, and they're the ones who installed it, and they did it unintentionally, but it was installed. In this case, though, they downloaded what they were told was a video codec, but did not really get a video codec. They might have gotten a video codec, but they got so much more. There was something hidden inside of that download for the video codec. And when something is hidden inside like that, we refer to it as a Trojan horse. It came in as one thing, and as soon as it got through the gates, it went through and started doing other things as well. So there's a good example of how that might work. Now, a number of different malware categories could also be plugged into these things. If this was, for example, showing a bunch of ads that popped up, even though we didn't mention any ads in this particular view, this is one where you could call it adware. If this is one that was tracking the things that you were doing, that might be something that might be a spyware of some type. So there are very broad categories of this, but we certainly get down to very specifics when I started showing the different categories and types that we had here. So those are the four that we were looking for. A user opened an email attachment labeled updated invoice. Minutes later, all documents on the workstation were renamed and a message demanded payment. That would be ransomware. A computer running slowly, CPU usage at 100%. The fans are now all constantly going. That means something is using that CPU, and that would be a crypto miner. A user that installed something that was perhaps not exactly what they wanted, but they sort of installed a bunch of things anyway, not really understanding what they were doing, could have installed a potentially unwanted program, or PUP, and something that you are installing, like a video codec, that comes with other, perhaps more malicious software. For example, one that would create an unauthorized admin account and begin connecting across the network to command and control servers. That would be a Trojan horse. So it's important to understand the nuances between these different malware types when you start getting into the exam itself and they start presenting these to you, not only in a performance-based question, but in multiple choice questions. You really need to understand not only what the different categories of malware are, but what the differences between those categories happen to be, because they're going to try to narrow you down to a very specific type. And admittedly, I gave you this one as a fill in the blank. And as I mentioned, the exam generally does not have fill in the blank questions. I think this gives us an idea of the type of data that needs to be in our brain and ready to go if they happen to ask a question like this. Well, that is our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you did well with your antivirus and anti-malware type of solutions. Make sure you're familiar with these malware types. They are listed in the official CompTIA exam objectives. Let's shift gears back to multiple choice questions, shall we? This next question is one that asks, a user's mobile device is experiencing extremely slow performance and app crashes, and the technician decides to perform a full restart. Which of the following best describes the purpose of this troubleshooting task? Is that to update the operating system, verifies the MDM enrollment, resets the accelerometer, clears RAM and caches, or disables the NFC subsystem. If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. See if you know what this one happens to be. This is one, when we get into multiple choice, at least we have options. It's not the fill in the blank that we just did. But unlike the fill in the blank, the multiple choice options that are available not only here but also on your exam will be very similar to each other. There'll be relationships between them. There'll be topics that are certainly covered in the official objectives. And that's something that I try to do in my question as well, is to make sure that you have the same type of style and the same type of tone as not only the questions that will be presented to you, but perhaps more importantly, the answers that will be presented to you. The answers is what makes these questions challenging in many ways. So I want to test you on that and see how well you know each one of these different technologies. Along those same lines, as you're going through the answers, if you see a technology you don't recognize, it's more than likely I grabbed that from the exam objectives. So make a note of it so that you can go back to the exam objectives and learn a lot more about what that technology is providing to you. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a user's mobile device is experiencing extremely slow performance and app crashes, and the technician decides to perform a full restart. Which of the following best describes the purpose of this troubleshooting task? Is it updates the operating system, verifies the MDM enrollment, resets the accelerometer, clears RAM and caches, or disables the NFC subsystem? How did you do? Let's close our poll. And you did pretty well, I think, because 86% of you chose a single answer, which is clears RAM and caches. Unless, of course, we all got that one wrong, in which case 7% of you that said updates the operating system may have gotten it right. 5% of you said reset the accelerometer. Maybe that's the right answer. 2% of you said verifies the MDM enrollment. That could be the right answer. Or is it the one that 0% of you chose, which would be to disable the NFC subsystem? Wouldn't that be delightful? Well, I think we can pretty much guess at this point. The 86% of you that answered clears RAM and caches, yes, that's exactly what we were dealing with. So if you run into a problem where apps are not launching, the system is becoming very slow, it's not working the way it would normally work, well, we should restart that device, because that is going to now clear out everything and effectively start from scratch. It's something that can help if you're running into apps that might have a memory leak. There might be something running in the background that you're just not aware of. This clears everything and gives you a clean place to start. And before you start doing anything dramatic on the system, updating apps, updating the operating system, performing a factory reset and restoring from backups, why would you go through making all of these changes when the problem might be solved by simply performing a restart? So it's a very good first step when you're working through troubleshooting of mobile devices, and it's one that we've sort of become accustomed to, I think. We still have people, though, that will send me notes that say, I'm having a problem with this mobile thing, what do I do? Well, have you turned it off and back on again? There is a reason that that's a thing. There is a reason that that's something we always say. Have you turned it off and back on again? And that's one reason we do that, is because it fixes so many things. If we're still having a problem, okay, now we're going to put our thinking cap on and try to figure out the details of this. You didn't need a thinking cap, though. You already knew. 86% of you knew the answer would be to clear RAM and caches. We would not update the operating system. The thing that we want to do first is always making sure that we've cleaned the slate. That point, we might want to make some changes. But before changing anything on the system, let's try the fixes that don't require us to make any changes. So restarting would really be the best answer here. Resetting the accelerometer, I guess it could be argued that restarting the system does indeed reset the accelerometer, but the question had nothing to do with the accelerometer inside of the mobile device. So although restarting the system does in many ways reset the accelerometer, that does not describe why we are performing the reset. So not the right answer. 2% of you said it verifies the MDM enrollment. And this might be another one of those where, well, it does reconnect to the MDM after it restarts. Well, I guess it does do that. But again, that's not the purpose of doing the restart, wasn't to verify MDM enrollment. And the problem they're having has nothing to do with the MDM or restricting our capability to perform functions on the mobile device. So not the best answer there either. And although 0% said disables the NFC subsystem, I think we can definitely say that it does not disable the NFC subsystem. I guess while it's rebooting, technically it's disabled. I guess if you want to go with technically, that is true, but that's not why we did the restart. Not the answer we were looking for. The answer we wanted was the one that 86% of you chose, which was to clear the RAM and the caches and hope for the best after that. As you can probably tell with these questions, there are a lot of topics covered in the Core 1 and Core 2 exam. We've got basic hardware, you've got operating systems, there's networking, there's security, there's cloud-based technologies, there's AI, there's so many different topics and things we need to know about. Well, one of the things that might be useful is for you to watch our entire comprehensive video course where we cover every single topic from the official exam objectives. But if you look at our catalog, that is 137 videos, 19 hours of content. I think you should watch all 137 videos. I think you should go through all 19 hours of that content. But there may be certain videos you don't have time to get to. Maybe they're topics you're relatively familiar with, so maybe you skip over those. So you might want to have some way to have a documentation of the things that were covered in that particular video, but you just didn't have time to cover them. And that's why I created a set of course notes that covers all of those details. My course notes have all of the important text, all of the important graphics, all of the important tables. Everything that is in those videos, I put into my set of course notes. These are I guess you don't see my physical course notes there. Maybe I should put myself on the screen so you could see them. There we go. So these are the physical course notes that are in my hand. They are identical to the digital PDF course notes that you see on the screen. And you can see I take them video by video in the same order as my course, in the same order as the official exam objectives. And we, of course, have all of the text. We have all of the command line information. We have all of the tables. We have all of the graphics, everything that you need to refresh your memory of the information you covered while watching those videos. This is a great place to go for trying to sort of understand where this content is most important, where it's coming from. So this might be something that can help you as well, especially if you don't have time to have all of that information on your system and being able to watch what's going on. This is a great way to carry it around with you, either in a physical format or a digital format. I'll also tell you, if you end up getting the physical book, we of course ship this to you. We print them on demand and ship them just for you. This is also something where we give you the digital version along with the physical version, and you can download it immediately. So as soon as you make your order for the physical edition, you can log into your member account on the Professor Messer website and download the PDF of this right away so you can start your studies even while you're waiting for the delivery to occur. If you want more information about that, it's all on our website. You can find it from the main menu or simply go to professormesser.com/1202notes. Let's do another multiple choice question, shall we? We want more tickets, don't we? Of course we do. This next one is a question that asks, a technician receives a ticket where a user reports they cannot log in to the company's internal payroll site. Which ticket category should be assigned to this issue to ensure it reaches the responsible team? Would it be a change request, hardware request, if I could change my screen here, or maybe not? What was the point of that after all? Is it, I guess if I picked the right thing there, had a little bit of a challenge there, hitting the right buttons today. Is it change request, hardware request, onboarding request, account request, or service request? The question again asks, a technician receives a ticket where a user reports they cannot log in to the company's internal payroll site. Which ticket category should be assigned to this issue to ensure it reaches the responsible team? Would that be a change request, a hardware request, an onboarding request, an account request, or a service request? If you know the answer, follow the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room, although you do pretty good with that. I know I keep saying it over and over, but there's a reason. So that's why. This may be one we have to really think about. There is a whole section of the exam that does talk about help desk and talks about managing things at a help desk. This is really because you've been asking about practical things that you can do on the exam. And this is a very practical thing, especially because many of us will be going through the process of figuring out the details of working at a help desk as one of our first positions. So this might be something might be useful to know, along with all of the other things you have to know when working in a help desk type position. I worked in a corporate help desk as one of my early jobs in IT, and it's always interesting the processes and procedures you have to go through. Let's see what processes and procedures you think you should go through. The question again asks, a technician receives a ticket where a user reports they cannot log in to the company's internal payroll site. Which ticket category should be assigned to this issue to ensure it reaches the responsible team? Is this a change request, hardware request, onboarding request, account request, or service request? Well, let's see what you chose. 60% of you say the answer is an account request. 33% of you say it's a service request. And 6% of you say it is an onboarding request. And in a rather unusual set of answers, we have 0% for change request and 0% for hardware requests. We often don't get two of them with a 0 in it. We're really focusing our efforts on the 60% that said account request and 33% that said service request. Well, as we can see in this particular question, somebody's having a problem where they can't log in. It's a very common question, and almost always it's because their password is wrong. Their particular login is no longer valid. Maybe it timed out. It is something relating to their account. And so this would be specifically sent over to the account team to figure out why can't this person log in to their account. That's really what we need to focus on if you're someone who's really working through trying to understand what's going on. Service request got 33% of the vote, but that wasn't the answer that we were looking for either. In the section of the exam objectives talking about categorization and escalation, we talk about what categories we would put things in, along with other pieces that we would add to the ticket, such as a severity or an escalation level. But we're talking here about a category. And this is perhaps one of the most important parts of the ticket because this generally determines where the ticket will be forwarded to. Will we send it to the network team? Should it go to the database team? Should it go over to the security team? None of these problems about this particular question seem to have anything related to databases. Wasn't really related to the network. We didn't see a network error. Wasn't really a security problem. We're not having an issue with security in this case. It's really more about this person's account. And that's why account request fits perfectly for the categorization of this ticket. A service request would be a problem with a service. Someone is not able to connect at all to a particular place. In this case, they're able to connect. They're just not able to log in. And that was really the difference between these two. We don't have a web server that's down. There's no database server that's down. There's no big service that's not working properly. This person just can't log in. So initially, it certainly seems that this is an account issue. Now, this is the thing you'll find when you start working at a help desk, of course, is that that's your first ticket that came in about this problem. And the next 10 phone calls are other people that are trying to log into the same payroll site who are also having a problem. So now with more context, we might want to change that categorization from account request to a service request. And that certainly gives us a place to go. So even what we might think the problem was initially, it might actually be a different problem when we start collecting more and more data, which means we would need to go back to this ticket later on and change this from an account request, change the categorization to a service request. Most help desk systems will also allow you to roll up a major event. Like if a site goes down, you can roll up everything into this major event and then assign tickets to that site going down. Then when the site comes back up and you can clear the site and say the site's working again, all of the tickets underneath that problem are cleared out as well, because fixing the site being down fixed all the other problems associated with those tickets. So it can be even multiple categories within hierarchies. These help desk systems can be relatively advanced. It allows you to do a lot of different things. And that is the answer that we were looking for here in account request. 60% of you got that one right, at least in the meantime. We'll keep watching these problems, and if it turns out to be something else, we may have to change that categorization. But not in this particular question anyway. One of those things that's something we need to keep in mind. That what we think might be initially might be something very different as we start doing more and more research. Let's go through another multiple choice question. Next on our list is this one. This question asks, a network administrator needs to manually configure a proxy server for a specific corporate application which is not using transparent redirection. Which Windows utility should be used to define this address? Would it be Network and Sharing Center, Internet Options, Performance Settings, Device Manager, or Indexing Options? It's a little bit too much delay there, isn't it? I think you know the language well enough. I could probably speak a little better. A network administrator needs to manually configure a proxy server for a specific corporate application which is not using transparent redirection. Which Windows utility should be used to define this address? Is it Network and Sharing Center, Internet Options, Performance Settings, Device Manager, or Indexing Options? If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen. Go to ProfessorMesser.com and lock in your answer. A lot of questions coming in quickly on this one. I wonder if that means that we all got it right. Does that mean we all think we know what it is and we don't? We never know what the answer is. I could peek and see what the answers are, but I don't like to do that. I like it to be just as interesting when I see the results as when you see the results. So we'll see how we do this. And I do specify the objective for each question. It is listed in the answer for the question on the right side of the screen. You'll see the objective listed there, the objective number, and the video name that I used to create the question. So you always know that these are directly related to an exam objective, certainly. Let's see how you did with this one. A lot of answers came in quick, and then suddenly it slowed down a lot, and we weren't seeing quite as many. So let's see how we did. A network administrator needs to manually configure a proxy server for a specific corporate application which is not using transparent redirection. Which Windows utility should be used to define this address? Would it be Network and Sharing Center, Internet Options, Performance Settings, Device Manager, or Indexing Options? Let's see what you chose. We will close our poll, click, and we can see that a bit of a pair taking the majority of this. 49% of you say that it is Network and Sharing Center, but 36% of you say the answer is Internet Options. And then we go directly to single digits. 7% say Device Manager, 7% say Indexing Options, and again, 0% say Performance Settings. To be fair, I did not think that it would be Performance Settings either. I didn't think anyone would choose that one. But we are sort of torn over Network and Sharing Center and Internet Options. Network and Sharing Center practically got a majority, 49%, very close to that, but unfortunately not the right answer. The answer we were looking for was Internet Options, which was the second highest at 36%. And you'll notice that this comes from that question earlier. This is the from the 220-1202 exam in the exam objective 1.6, and the video is the Windows control panel. So you can at least find that in your objectives if you're looking for that. Now, why is it Internet Options and not Network and Sharing Center? Well, one of the things that is kind of odd about this question in some ways is that not every place you will go, not every network that you will connect to, not every place you will work will have proxies. There are different types of proxies that are used as inbound proxies. There are some proxies that are used as outbound proxies. There are some proxies that are built into next generation firewalls so they can do a SSL decryption. It's really a proxy process that makes that happen. So proxying is both a technology that's been around for a very, 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 very long time in its original form, And it is still a technology that still exists in a very modern form. For example, if you go to ProfessorMesser.com right now, you don't actually hit ProfessorMesser.com. You hit a proxy first, and the proxy communicates back to ProfessorMesser.com. Not only does that provide me a way to cache this information and get the information to you very quickly, it also is a bit of a security piece because I can stop and look at the requests that are coming in and then decide how I want that to happen. We call that an inbound or reverse proxy. An outbound proxy, which is what we're talking about here, is one that we are inside of our local network and we have a proxy that is connected to the internet, and effectively we ask the proxy to make our requests for us across the internet. That is effectively the definition of a proxy, something that sits in the middle and does the task on your behalf. So in this case, maybe this company still has a manual proxy server, an outbound proxy server that they're configuring, and a lot of places still do. And we need to sometimes be able to configure that proxy in our Windows configuration, which means we want to go to Internet Options. And under the Internet Options, there is a lot to go through in this case. Plenty of information about the configurations for your browser, configurations for security. There's privacy options inside of it, content options, and this is the place, although I don't have it up on my screen right here. Wonder why I didn't put it there. But there in the video, you will see the option for also configuring proxy information, the proxy addresses. That's because normally your computer will want to talk directly to the server that is on the internet. What you're telling your operating system is, don't talk directly to that server. Always talk to the proxy first. The proxy will do the talking for you, and then you'll get a response back from the proxy. That might also be something you configure in a more global configuration setting. If you're running in a Windows environment, you're probably doing some type of Active Directory database, and you can have group policies that set that for you. But sometimes you may have to do this manually on a system, and the Internet Options is the place where you would do that. It would not be Network and Sharing Center. That is a place where you would go to configure settings of your network adapter, configure IP addressing, enable or disable certain sharing on the system, but it's not where you would configure a proxy. Proxy configurations are done in Internet Options. 7% of you said indexing options. This indexing option doesn't talk or refer to network communication. The indexing option is talking about the data and the files that are on your local system. And when you run that search that's at the bottom of your toolbar, your Windows toolbar, and you're searching, look for everything with the word backup inside of it, and you get all of these different options. Here's a file with the word backup. Here's a file name with the word backup in it. Here is a backup file that you made with the .backup extension. So you'll find every reference for backup. That is because you have indexed all of that information. That's how you're able to find those so quickly. Your system's not going through every file on your system every time you do a search. It simply goes to the index, and the index tells you where this information happens to be. It's almost like the index that you would have in the back of a book. Instead of looking through every page of the book for the information, we just go to the index. The index tells us, oh, that's on page 2, 7, 17, and 20. It makes it much faster. Same process, except on a computer. And lastly, in Device Manager is used to configure this middle point, the device drivers that allow us to have hardware in our computer, but somehow talk to and work with that hardware in our operating system. The device driver is that midpoint between both of those, and Device Manager configurations, the status of the hardware, the ability of the operating system to work properly with the hardware is something you would see in Device Manager that has nothing to do with configuring a proxy server. And performance settings are useful to be able to see performance information on your computer, but we're not really having a performance problem, and you would not configure a proxy server from performance settings, but you knew that already because 0% of you told me that. So I know that that's not the right answer because you told me, definitely, we know that's not the right answer. And you're absolutely correct. It is not the right answer. The one we were looking for is the one that unexpectedly was the second most popular answer, where 36% of you chose Internet Options, and those of you got it absolutely correct. Make sure you're very familiar with all of those little tabs inside of that configuration so you know what type of options might be available and exactly where you would go inside of Windows to make those configuration changes. We still have a little bit of time before the top of the hour, so let's do another question, shall we? Let's see if we can get another one through here. The next question on our list is this one, and it asks, an organization's security policy states no device, whether inside or outside the physical office, should be automatically allowed access without authentication. Which of the following best describes this policy? Would that be least privilege, zero trust, access control list, multi-factor authentication, or OTP? It's got to be one of those, right? All of these are exam objectives, but which one is it? The question again asks, an organization's security policy states no device, whether inside or outside the physical office, should be automatically allowed access without authentication. Which of the following best describes this policy? Would it be least privilege, zero trust, access control list, multi-factor authentication, or OTP? See if you know the answer by going to the link that is on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See how you do with that one. This should be a good one to step through. Maybe you're familiar with some of these different security requirements or tools or options. This is something that you may have to run into when you're trying to make your network a little bit more secure, which certainly sounds like what's happening in this question. If you think you know which one it is, lock in your answer with that link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to tell me what you think the right answer might be. Let's see how you did. The question asks, an organization's security policy states no device, whether inside or outside the physical office, should be automatically allowed access without authentication. Which of the following best describes this policy? Would that be least privilege, zero trust, access control list, multi-factor authentication, or OTP? Let's see how we did with this one. We will close our poll. Big numbers on this one. 79% of you say the answer is zero trust. That's what we were looking to find. But you can see everything else. We have another double digit, at least 13% of you said access control list. We also have single digits. 6% said multi-factor authentication. 2% said a one-time password. That's what an OTP is. And then 0% say least privilege. Nobody, again, we got a 0% on this list. Nobody said least privilege. You are some discerning readers of questions for sure. 79% of you said zero trust, but is it really? Let's find out if that was the right answer. Of course, that's the right answer. That is from the 220.1202 section 2.1, and the video this comes from is the one that's called Logical Security. Zero trust is a very common security strategy that many organizations are using these days. It used to be you would log into the network, and once you log in, you're on the inside of your network, and you pretty much have access to all of the resources that are on the inside. That's something that makes sense. If you're inside the building, you're certainly trusted, right? Except now we're finding that the attackers also get inside the building, either physically or virtually, and we want to be sure that they don't have access to all of these systems either. So what we have implemented is a way to always assume that the people and the devices inside the network are not trusted. How does that make you feel? They don't trust you, but that's okay. You can certainly put in the correct credentials so that you can be trusted. This is the process of going through zero trust. And zero trust itself checks everything. In fact, it may even add on additional security just to prove that you are who you say you are. So zero trust might include not just usernames and passwords. There may be encryption. There might be device certificates. There might be multi-factor authentication. There's a lot of different ways and methods to involve multiple security strategies within a zero trust architecture. And this is certainly something that most organizations these days are either have completely implemented or have in a very broad and very large amount of ways have implemented as well. It's pretty important to be able to focus on that. Zero trust it's so important that it's in the A+, it's in the Network Plus, and it's in the Security Plus. It's probably in CASP as well. So all of these are going to be important. I guess now the CISA and the Security X, no more CASP is there. Zero trust is the answer that we were looking for, and zero trust is the one that 79% of you chose. 13% of you said an access control list. An access control list is generally something people think of as a policy that allows or disallows a certain flow of communication, either through the network. Maybe it allows or disallows access to a particular resource on a file server. Access control list, it's just a very broad term that describes setting up a rule that would then allow or disallow access. But just because you have an access control list doesn't mean that the access control list is doing the authentication, because very often the access control list is not. The access control list is just a piece of paper that the bouncer has. And you show up and go, no, I'm allowed in. I'm Professor Messer. Check your list. Oh, let me check my list. Pull up the list. We'll have a look. Oh, well, I'm seeing the list. Oh, your name is on the list. You can go in. Or before they do that, go, I do see your name on the list. But how do I know that you're Professor Messer? Okay, so now we're past the access control list. Now we're moving into an authentication mode. And that's where the differences are between the list that's in the clipboard and confirming that person really is who they say they are. So it would not be access control list because of that. Multi-factor authentication is something that occurs during that authentication process to help verify that the person is really who they say they are. But having a policy that requires someone to authenticate every time they hit any type of resource, regardless of where they happen to be, in and of itself is not multi-factor authentication. In fact, your company might not even provide any multi-factor authentication. Shame on them, but that's certainly something that might not happen. Or maybe if you're inside the building, you don't have to do multi-factor authentication, but if you're outside the building, you do. All of those things go into the mix of zero trust. We're evaluating how risky that might be, and we're adding additional security controls as the risk goes up. OTP, or one-time password, many of us are familiar with that as well. You log into a service, and instead of putting in a password, they send you an email that's got a code inside of it. And that is their one-time password that gets you into the authentication of that system so that you can then access the service. Or maybe it's a one-time password you add on to a username and password to provide another factor of authentication. In many ways, multi-factor authentication, OTP, could be one of those factors being used in a multi-factor authentication, which is, again, why it is not this particular answer that we were looking for, and only 2% of you chose that one. Only 0% of you chose least privilege. Ironically, least privilege is a big part of zero trust. Not only do we set up these requirements to authenticate to a system, zero trust is also about making sure that people are only accessing the things they really need access to be able to do their job. This limits what a potential attacker is able to do. If somebody does gain access to someone's username and password, and they log into their system, maybe even remotely over a VPN, and now the attacker wants to hit the database that has everybody's name, their contact information, and how much they make in the company, well, they're not going to be able to do it because the person they logged in as doesn't have access to that database. They don't have access to that database because their job doesn't require them to have access to that database, and we refer to that as least privilege. And you knew that already because 0% of you got that one in the list. The answer that 79% of you chose, the answer that is correct in this case, is indeed zero trust. That is exactly what we were looking for. Well done with that one. I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's squeeze in another question, shall we? We'll get another one into our list here. This question will be a little bit different. We're not going to do this question in our Vevox front end. Instead, I want to give you a question that comes from my practice exams book. Unlike this live stream or any of the other live streams that we've done, our practice exam book has a list of questions and answers and things you haven't seen before, because the only place to see those questions is in this book. These questions and answers have been written specifically for this book, and we do not use them anywhere else. This is a big book, 380 pages of questions and answers. There are 3 separate 90-question exams inside of this book. So you can go through the process of 5 performance-based questions and 85 multiple-choice-based questions in each one of those 3 exams. So that means 15 performance-based questions are inside of this book, along with hundreds of multiple-choice questions that you can then go through. This is another one that's also available in this physical book form, but it's also available in a PDF. And I have the PDF here that we will use to go through this next question. I'll also remind you, same rules apply. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room, although we will not be answering this one in our Vevox front end. The question I have for you is question A44. So it's in this first set of 90 questions. If we were looking at the book, it's on page 16. If you already have the practice exams book. This question asks, a user in the sales department is attempting to upgrade the operating system of their smartphone, but the smartphone will not start the installation when selected. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Is it the Bluetooth is enabled? Is it the smartphone storage is nearly full? Is it the rotation lock is disabled? Or is it the phone is connected to a power source? If you think you know the answer, then you'll just have to think about it because we don't have the Vevox set up for this one. That's okay. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will figure out what we think the right answer to this one might be. Now, because this is a book, I have in the book a separate set of answers that are just on a single page. Those answers are just listed as A, B, C, or D. I think I might have a list of those in here. Very quickly show you. So for one of these, it's just a big list on a single page of all 90 of those questions, and it's A, B, C, or D. But sometimes you want more information about a question. You want more details about what that question involves. And because of that, we want to have more of a detailed set of answers. So in this book, if you just want the quick answers, is it A, B, C, or D, you go to page 33. Remember, I'm on page 16. So we want the detailed set of answers. They're on page 82. Well, one of the things that always challenges me when I'm working with a PDF is that I have to scroll to get through this thing. So what I did in my book is I made these links. So if we click on the details, it will take me very quickly to page 82. That's after, because this is a PDF, I can annotate it. I can also, choose different things on the screen. If I've got a stylus, I can write on this, and you can save all of those things. So nothing is locked out. You are still able to use this PDF to its full capacity. And then to go to page 82, I'm just going to click on where it says the details, click, and it takes me to page 82. Just like that. There's the question at the top, and it tells us the answer is B, the smartphone storage is nearly full. And I do what I guess some of the questions on the internet might do that you've seen, is it gives you an explanation of why that is the right answer, which is certainly important. But one of the things that may be in many ways more important is when you get the question wrong. And it's an opportunity to learn more about what you don't know. We're finishing up that circle of knowledge. So you started with the question, you gave it what you thought the answer would be, and then you got it wrong. Well, the next step would be, why did I get it wrong? And that's the question I also ask myself when I get these questions wrong. Unfortunately, a lot of the online or available systems that I've seen that are providing questions very often don't even tell you why you got it wrong, or the answers themselves are not quite right in the way that they've set the context. But in our book, every single question tells you why the incorrect answers are indeed incorrect, because I think that's an important part of the study process. If you chose Bluetooth is enabled, I explained to you why Bluetooth being enabled would not be the right answer. If you chose the rotation lock is disabled, I explain why rotation lock does not apply for this question. And the phone is connected to a power source, I explain why that's actually a good thing and not a bad thing. So we get that immediate feedback, whether we got it right or whether we got it wrong. In fact, I'll even recommend, if you already have this book and you answer it right, make sure you read through the wrong answers, because this could be a technology that shows up as the main question on your actual exam. So each question is sort of like getting 4 different questions at the same time, because you have 4 different topics that you need to know about. Now, if you read through this question and none of this made sense to you, I include a link to the video that I used to create this question. So in this case, you can see it's from the 220-1202 exam, exception 3, objective 3.2, troubleshooting mobile devices. And then I have a link that you can either type into your browser that will take you there. If we're in the PDF like I am here, you can click that link and it says, okay, we'll open that up in your browser. In fact, I can probably open it up in my browser. It opens up on my other window, but it did open up. Let's see if I got it here. So opened it right up so I can watch the video that describes that particular question. Or there's a QR code. So if you are in the physical book, you can use your phone, pull out the camera, scan the QR code, and it also takes you to the video that is on that particular page. Once we're done with this question, there we can use the back button in our PDF reader. Did you even know your PDF reader had a back button? It does. Most do. Not all of them, but all the good ones. And if we click the back button, click, takes us back to where we started, and we can go to the next question that is in our book. Those are our practice exams. And if this is something you think might be helping you, once you've watched the videos, you've read a good book, you've done some labs, and you're really ready to test yourself, you can get our practice exams book. If you get the practice exams book along with the course notes, then you also get a little bit of a discount over buying them as separate books. So a little bit of a cost break for you. You can also bundle in the Core 1 and the Core 2 at the same time. That's something that you think might help you. Those are my practice exams. Hopefully that gives you a place to start with practice exams and sort of understand where I think the highest quality practice exams you're going to find might be on the internet. Find out more at professormesser.com/core2pe. There's also, as I've mentioned constantly in the study group already, there are objectives that you can get from CompTIA that tell you everything you need to know about this exam. I mean, everything you need to know about this exam. And what's also nice about these objectives is that they are absolutely free. That's right. No cost at all to get your hands on these objectives. They are available on the CompTIA website. I have a link that will take you over there at professormesser.com/objectives. And that will take you to this list of exam objectives. You can download the PDF right away, which gives you an overview of the exam, tells you about the 4 different domains in the Core 2 exam. And then it takes you through a detailed breakdown of everything you need to know. So for example, in Domain 1, which is operating systems, Section 1.1, explain common operating system types and their purposes. You need to understand workstation systems such as Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and Chrome OS. You also have to know mobile operating systems such as iPad OS, iOS, and Android. Then you have to know file system types such as NTFS, REFS, FAT32, ext4, XFS, APFS, and exFAT. We also have to understand vendor lifecycle limitations, such as end-of-life and update limitations. And we also have to understand compatibility concerns between operating systems. So just in that first section, we have detailed information about what we need to know. And I think I probably have 2 or 3 videos I created just on this very first section to cover every single one of those objectives. Once you have gone through, learn those objectives, understand the differences, feel pretty good about them, you can go to the next list that we have here. I guess I should put this in something that we can see a little better. Section 1.2, here we are, Section 1.2, and we can go to all of the objectives that are there. Then Section 1.3, then Section 1.4, and it goes on and on and on, and still more, and there's more, and I think we're finally at the end right there. That's a lot of objectives, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics that you need to know for this exam. There is no better place to go than the objectives. They tell you everything to the point. CompTIA sticks to this list so tightly that if you know everything that is in this single document, you cannot help but pass your exam because they don't deviate from that list, and the list is comprehensive. It is very detailed. And of course, we cover every single one of those bullets in our video because I use the objectives as well to create my training courses. Something that might help you, and it's absolutely free to download. Quick link to it is over at professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups every month for A+ Core 1, for A+ Core 2, for Network Plus, and for Security Plus. And you'll notice that we have our July dates here on the screen is July 9th right now, Thursday, as we sit here live. Our next study group is on Friday of next week. That is our Network Plus study group. Haven't written the questions for that one yet. That's something maybe I'll work on this weekend. And then on Wednesday of the following week, the 22nd of July, is our Security Plus study group. Of course, we've already got our August dates set for the Core 1, Core 2 on August 4th and 6th. Network Plus is currently scheduled for the 12th of August and Security Plus on the 19th of August. Now, these dates can sometimes change. sometimes a number of times. So I would highly recommend that you always check in to see when the latest updates have been made or when the next event is going to be. I always keep the most updated list at the link that you see on your screen. It's also the link that is available at the top of my website. So you can just go to professormesser.com, click the events link, and it brings up the calendar that tells you what the next event is going to be. If I go to professormesser.com, on the website, one of the things that you'll see there is the events link right at the top, and the events link will show you the calendar that has all of the events that are going on. Right now, we're even doing the event that we have at the top. There's the one for the rest of July, and I think I have the August dates in here. Not yet. So the August dates will be going in shortly. I try not to confuse people on when these events are going to be, but we summarize them on the screen as well, so you can see everything that is going to happen coming up. And if it changes, you'll see it change there first, so you know you're looking at the latest information. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A already, but we're not done yet. It's almost time for the after show. Instead of me asking you questions, why don't you ask me some questions? You can do that by using the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. There's a tab at the top, and you can submit questions for the after show from that link. Don't forget about our course notes, our practice exams, our success bundle. You can find it at professormesser.com/1202success. We also have our vouchers, our discounted vouchers, more importantly, and our free exam hacks ebook just included with your purchase of the voucher at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, if you're on social media, we'd like to see you there. You can find us on Discord at professormesser.com/Discord. Our daily pop quiz questions at professormesser.com/X/Instagram and /LinkedIn. You can find us on YouTube at professormesser/YouTube and so on. It's a great place to keep up with what we're doing. Hopefully you'll find some information there that can really help you with your A+ studies. Well, that brings us to the end of another study group, at least our first hour. Stick around for the after show coming up in just a few seconds. Thank you so much for joining us on this study group. We will see you next time on the A+ Core 2 study group. Okay, one moment, please. Let me take a sip. Now we've taken a sip. Now we can pull this in. Now we can put my face on the screen. I say we can do that. Sure, we can do that. Hey, everybody. Now we can really do... Oh, I did not. And thank you, chat room, for reminding me about the CEU for this one. I went through another hour and didn't give you a CEU. So it's time to do that, right? Time for you to go through the process of doing that. If you would like to earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU for watching this, I would love to send you an email that has the information you need to have that 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. This was obviously good if you have already got a certification, you need to renew it, although there are some third parties that will also use these CEUs. The way that you would earn the CEU is you follow these instructions, and you must follow these instructions to earn the CEU. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In the Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put July 2026 Core 2. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, Zero Trust OTP. That's what we're looking for. The super secret code words of the month, Zero Trust OTP. Put those in. You can also put any other text in there that you would like. If you have a message you'd like to send to me, I do read through every single one of these. And it's always nice to see where you are in the process, the things you've been doing, what you're working on. It's very motivating to me to read those as well. Send those in. It takes me about a week to turn these around, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. And then you'll receive an email from me that has been digitally signed that certifies that you are here for a 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. That process, again, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us. In the Contact Us link, put in your email, your name, your in the subject line, put July 2026 Core 2. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, Zero Trust OTP. Send that to me. I will take it from there. Well, now's the time where we need to go through the process of looking at your questions. And if you would like to submit a question, we would love you to do so. The way that you would do that is go to this link, professormesser.com/QA, to submit your question. You can submit them at any time. Obviously, they won't pop up on the screen the moment you submit them. They go into a queue on this side. Then I work through the details of figuring out what questions we would like to cover in this month's after show Q&A. We already have a bunch of questions that are coming into this mix, and it's something that might help you quite a bit. There is quite a bit in the exam objectives that we need to know about. Sometimes a lot of these things get a little convoluted. There's a lot in there. Sometimes these objectives don't give you all of the information you need. They give you some of the information you need. You have to read between the lines, and we're seeing a little bit of this. Jay sent this in and asked, what are some keywords or phrases used to figure out when taking the test to refer to performance monitor, task manager, or resource monitor? And will we need to know the application's MSC names? This is something that we see people even going to the process of trying to determine what you click on the screen to get there. Although modern versions of the exam don't really ask you that level of detail. Now that there's a search on your taskbar, you just type it in and you can find it very easily. So they don't tend to ask you how you find it. They used to do that back in the day. Not a very good question, really. But the question here is more about MSC names and what you would choose for those, choose for those MSC names. I guess it would be good if I had me on the screen and not you on the screen. It would be good. There we go. MSC names. So I think the best place to go to figure this out is going to be, not surprisingly, the official CompTIA exam objectives. So let's find out more about what we're looking at with those particular things that we need to know, because there's a lot covered in Windows. And of course, everything we need to know is in here. So the question was specifically was about, see if I can find it myself, was about performance monitor, task manager, resource monitor, and if we need to know the MSC names, the Microsoft control panel name, which is effectively an executable file, but MSC just happens to be how we designate that. So let's go to the exam objectives. Here's the exam objectives. I'm going to specifically focus on section 1.4. Given a scenario, use Microsoft Windows operating system features and tools. And you can see in the exam objectives, they go through in Task Manager. They say you need to know more than just Task Manager. You need to understand the Services tab, the Startup tab, the Performance tab, the Processes tab, and the Users tab. So they really do give you quite a bit of information. They lead you down the path. But here answers the question we were looking at earlier under the next option, which is Microsoft Management Console, MMC, Snap-in. We need to know Event Viewer. But we need to know more than just Event Viewer, don't we? And you'll notice in my presentation in the video training that we did, I include event vwr.msc on the page. And the reason I add that on the page is because CompTIA added that on the page. They told us you do need to know Event Viewer and you need to know event vwr.msc. So they tell you, they give you that feedback. You need to know this. Same thing with disk management, which is diskmgmt.msc, task scheduler, taskschd.msc. You get the idea. Even to a point where they even go through the individual executables. So for system information, you need to know that system information is msinfo32.exe. You need to know that system configuration is msconfig.exe. So they give you those prompts in the exam objectives. It's a great place to, I've told you, this is the best place to go to know what's on the exam. This is why I say that, because they are effectively telling you letter for letter, word for word, you need to know this. To that point, if they put something in there in that exam objective, then we need to know it. If it's not in the exam objectives, you don't need to know it. So this is the part where it may be difficult at times to parse that, to figure out exactly what they mean. After all, we go back to that list, back to the list of exam objectives, they put into this list task manager, and they put in services tab, startup tab, performance tab, processes tab, users tab. But they don't tell you what about those tabs you need to know. You have to figure that part out. They've led you all the way to the water. You're the one that now has to drink. So based on that, you should already recognize, okay, I need to know all the tabs. Therefore, I really need to know what those tabs are doing. What does the services tab do? What does the startup tab do? What does the performance tab do? Et cetera, et cetera. And perhaps even just as important, what are the differences and how would those be used? Is there a relationship between those? Do they really handle different things? If you change something in one tab, does something else change? Which one of these do I choose if I need to perform a function? There's a scenario. Do I go to the startup tab or do I go to the processes tab? So there's a lot in those 5 bullets. There's a lot. And that's why in my video, I go through those scenarios. Here's what's on the tab. Here's when we would use it. Here's why you would choose that option, because that's really what is expected of you when you look at the exam. So that's my recommendation to you, Jay, is to go out to the exam objectives and use the exam objectives in many ways as a very literal representation of what you need to know, but not quite that literal. You still have to dig into each one of those, but at least now you have a structure. And you can really get an understanding from the way that the objectives are structured, what they're asking you to know. And I've been, of course, doing this for a number of years. I started with the 600 series exam. So 600, 700, 800, 9,000, 1100. This is my 7th A+ course. So I've gone through these exam objectives and created a course 7 times. So I feel like now I sort of understand the language enough. I understand the nuance. I can really read between the lines pretty well because I've sort of understood where they've been going with these the entire time. I've tried to put that across into the course. So even if you can't read between the lines or you're really not understanding what they're asking of you, just go to the video. And in the videos, I strive to give you exactly what you need. I try not to give you too little. I try not to give you too much. I try to give you exactly the context that CompTIA is asking based on those exam objectives. And I think most of the time we get those pretty accurate. We get very good feedback about that at this point. Sometimes I go a little bit more than what they ask for because in previous versions of the exam, they went a little further. And now it becomes difficult for even me to parse out where the beginning and the end might be. So sometimes a little bit more information is better than no information at all. What I don't want to do is give you way too much information that's completely unnecessary. And I think we avoid that in the course. We do a good job at keeping you away from having to learn too much, especially something that would not apply towards this. I hate watching a training course or reading a book and you're through this big section. They're going into a lot of detail. And then at the end they go, but of course you don't need to know any of this for the exam. That's really just for you to know. Like, ugh, that's great, but I'm studying for an exam. I can go back and read about the history of the world once I'm through the exam. Can I get through the exam first? There's plenty of time for filling in those blanks later. Let's just get through the exam content right now. So I try to focus on that. And that's why the courses are written the way they are written. That's how they are written, the way they are written. Let's do some more questions. We have more. This is another one. I get questions like this all the time. This is from Zorro, who says, "Hi, sir. You're going to do multiple choice questions live on Security Plus?" We sure are. Our calendar tells us everything we need to know about what's happening and when it is happening. So multiple choice questions and performance-based questions are part of every live study group. So we certainly do those as well. And we do a weekly Security Plus performance-based question as well. So, or multiple choice questions as well. So that's another place you can go to get multiple choice questions. One moment, please. I'm going to adjust a few things on this side, if you can bear with me for a moment. 10 seconds. The live event. We are moving things around all the time, aren't we? There's always something going on a live event. So thank you for bearing with me a little bit. Multiple choice questions and performance-based questions, they are top of mind. They're things that people ask about all the time with our courses. So I certainly want to be sure I'm giving you that information as well. So you'll find that in a lot of different places on our website, but mostly these live streams allow us to do it and to kind of have some fun with it as well. Let's do some more questions. More on our list. This is a good one, especially if you're new to A+, you haven't seen these exams before. This is from Pete, who asks, are the CompTIA A+ Core 1 and Core 2 separate exams? And the second part of this question is, well, and of course, along those lines, meaning do I need to pay for each one of these exams each time? Continuing the question, about the retake assurance, is there only one more chance included? So let's break down these vouchers for you so that you can really understand what is expected of you. And where I'm going to go to give you more information on that is, of course, ProfessorMesser.com. There is a vouchers link right at the top of the screen where you can go to get your vouchers. We're going to click on that. And here is the list of discounted vouchers. Let's choose A+, and we'll go to the A+ voucher page. You can see the list price for this voucher is $274 if you went to the CompTIA website. If you purchase exactly the same voucher on my site, $245 US. So you save a bit of money over buying those separately. CompTIA has also introduced over the last couple of years another capability they call retake assurance. In a traditional voucher, the one that is $245 USD in its discounted form, that is a single A+ voucher, and it is good for taking either the A+ Core 1 exam or the A+ Core 2 exam. In fact, we say on the screen is applicable towards any available A+ exam, including the 220-1201 or the 220-1202, which means if you want to take both of those exams, you're working towards your A+, you have to take both of those exams, which means you have to buy at least 2 vouchers, one for the first exam, one for the second exam. Now, traditional vouchers was a one-time use. You used the voucher. If you passed, you were done with the exam. If you failed, you had to buy another voucher and take the exam again. But now they've introduced something known as retake assurance, and we've added those to our site as well. The retake assurance, if you add on another $76 to this original cost, not another $245, just another $76, now you can take the exam twice. So if you fail the first time, you can take the exam again, and you don't have to buy another voucher for that. It's effectively insurance. So you're hoping that you pass, but if you don't pass, you haven't had to pay for another voucher just to take the exam again. And for many of us, $76 is a good price to pay to have that insurance. Maybe it's going to calm us down the first time through, because even if we fail, it's not the end of the world. I'll just take it again. I got the same voucher. I got retake assurance. I'll just take it again, and I'll pass it the second time. That's the idea behind retake assurance. You can add retake assurance to any or all of these vouchers. So you can buy 2 vouchers and get them with retake assurance all at the same time if you wanted to. I really recommend you buy the vouchers one at a time unless you know you're going to use them relatively quickly. There's about a 1-year expiration on these vouchers. And although we have in mind a lot of times that we're going to take these exams and we're going to do it all in a month, we'll finish all of these out in 2 months, then we'll be done. But then life happens and things occur, and then you're a year down the road and realizing, wait, I paid for these vouchers and I still haven't taken this exam. CompTIA does not allow you to extend those expiration dates. They are pretty strict with the expiration dates. And I've had people come back to me and say, I really haven't been able to take this exam and it expires at the end of July. Can we just extend that a little bit? Well, if it's up to me, yes, but they're not my vouchers. I have no control over voucher management, voucher use, voucher expirations, nothing. I'm effectively just giving you a discount. I'm facilitating the discount piece of it, but CompTIA still manages all of those. And CompTIA is pretty strict with those expiration dates. And you have a year. So maybe that's what you think about is, can I take these exams before the end of July? You got some time. You could cram that in and finish before the end of July if that was the case. But just be aware that they are very particular about those expiration dates. So that's why I tell people, only purchase the voucher maybe close to the time you know you're going to need it, because the timer starts the instant that you buy it. It's a 1-year counter that is counting down. CompTIA has been pretty good about those recently, though. If you buy a voucher from me today, and we're here on the 9th of July, the expiration is the end of July next year. So you actually get 1 year and 3 weeks or so out of it. So there is some benefit there to doing things that way. But they try to give you a little bit of extra time even on top of those. Maybe that will help you if you're running into an expiration date problem. So yes, for A+, 2 exams, you need 2 vouchers, you have to pay twice. And if you wanted to include the insurance, the retake assurance on top of that, a little bit of an extra charge, but you get 1 retake with that. So to answer your question, yes, you could fail 1 time, you can take the retake, but then that's it. They don't have a voucher where you can take it 3 times. They don't make one of those. You would have to buy another voucher at that point if you were in that situation. Let us keep going through your list of questions. One moment, please, because now I usually put a clock up so I know what time of day it is. Did I do that in this case? I did not. So we'll figure that piece out. Now I do. Now I have the big clock is running. Did not have that before. So now I can see what is going on here in the studio and be able to manage my time a little bit better. There's some really great questions in here about the things you can do. And this is another one where I tell people that we need to know the content. First and foremost, we need to know the content. And this is a question from Lucas, who asks, not in that view, he doesn't. He asks right here, hello, Professor Messer. Do you have any recommendations of things I can practice at the command line to help me pass the performance-based questions? Thank you for your time and help. And again, I will reiterate that performance-based questions are not very different from multiple choice questions. If anything, you can kind of think of a performance-based question as sort of an amalgamation of multiple choice questions. So there are many multiple choice questions sort of involved within a single performance-based question. But again, you should not be studying how the questions are being asked. You should be studying what are they asking you in the questions, which is very different. And so along those lines, Lucas is asking, what can I practice at the command line that can really help me with what could ultimately be a performance-based question? It could also ultimately be a multiple choice question. You're studying and you're covering both bases at the same time. So I would recommend going to your exam objectives, of course. And on this exam objectives, I'm going to go to section 1. This is the Core 2 exam. And there's a section 1.5 that says, given a scenario, use the appropriate Microsoft command line tools. And here they are: cd, dir, ipconfig, ping, netstat, nslookup, netuse, traceroute, path ping, check disk, format, disk, etc., etc., etc. They're all here. CompTIA sticks to this list of Windows command lines. They will not ask you anything outside the scope of the command lines. Certainly nothing outside the scope they will grade. And everything you need to know is right here as far as Microsoft is involved. Now, in this same exam, I'm going to go to another section, which is section 1.9, where you need to identify common features and tools of Linux, because there's a whole nother set of Linux command lines we need to know. So every command line you need to know, and there's quite a few, but every command line you need to know is right here in the exam objectives. They tell you everything. You don't have to go any further than this list. Stick to this list. Don't go outside the scope of this list, and make sure you know everything that is on this list. And that's what you need to know, not only for the multiple choice questions, but also for potentially any performance-based questions. And that's why I tell you this covers both for you. Just study the exam objectives, and then it doesn't matter how they ask the question. You're going to know the answer every single time. So make sure you get this list. The objectives are available at professormesser.com/objectives. That would be one of the best places to go. And then you're covered for whatever they ask. A lot of your command line questions are going to be multiple choice. because, as I mentioned, you can get a potentially 90 questions on your exam maximum. You might get fewer than 90, but let's say you get 90 on your exam. 5 of the questions or so, maybe 3, maybe 7, somewhere around there, somewhere around 5 questions will be performance-based questions, something other than multiple choice. Well, I've done the math. That means 85 questions will be multiple choice questions. So the vast majority of questions that you will get on the exam will be our traditional, comfortable, well understood multiple choice question. Now that means that you will probably get a lot more questions about command lines in the multiple choice questions than you might have ever gotten in a performance-based question. Maybe they're not. Maybe you'll get a lot more in the performance. They might mix it up a little bit and do all of those things. But I think that's someone, if you're really interested in knowing and working through multiple choice questions or performance-based questions, you shouldn't be studying the questions. You should be studying the answers. You should be studying the exam objectives. And that's if there's one big thing I can recommend telling you about and that you would have done with that, that's what it is. I definitely want you to study the content so that you don't run into problems. I know people would try to find out what other people had on their exam for performance-based questions, and then try to study, how the question was constructed. You're wasting a lot of time. If you just know the answers, then you're done. Don't worry about the question, worry about the answers. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. We get so wrapped around the axle sometimes when we're worrying about these exams. We sometimes worry about the wrong things. And I think worrying about the structure of the question is definitely a wrong thing. Worry about the answers. That's where we should focus. Let's keep going through this list. I love an opinion question because I can't get these wrong. This opinion question comes to us from my good friend, Anonymous. And Anonymous asks, "G'day, Mr. Messer. Some people say Core 2 is easier than 1, but others say Core 1 is easier than 2. In your experience, what would you say is the easiest one of the two?" Well, that's a good question. What is the easiest one of those two? And the answer, of course, is one or the other. It's one or the other. And it really mostly depends on your personal experience. I will say, if you come into this with no knowledge of technology, I would say the difficulty level of Core 1 and the difficulty level of Core 2, pretty comparable. They're almost identical in their difficulty level. So go back to the Olympics. You've got somebody who is a diver. They're on the 20-meter platform, and everybody in that competition has to perform a forward pike. Everybody has to do one. The fundamentals, and everybody performs a forward pike. Everybody has the same difficulty level. They're all at 20 meters. They're all doing exactly the same dive. But there's going to be nuances and differences between all of them because that's the nature of diving. Well, it's a similar thing here, is that the Core 1 and Core 2, from a difficulty level perspective, pretty much the same. But people come into these exams very often with some predetermined knowledge, things that they've done in the past. So if you've ever configured your own computer, maybe you've built your own computer before, you may find the Core 1 exam is really, really easy for you compared to the Core 2 exam, which really focuses more on applications, operating systems, utilities, Linux, Mac OS, really the OS side of things. So if we broadly talk about Core 1 as hardware and Core 2 as operating systems, that's a pretty good designation. It's so broad that it really isn't very accurate, but for the purposes of this conversation, let's go with that. And let's say that instead of you building your own computers, let's say that you have worked a lot at the Windows front end. Maybe you even already work at a help desk. Maybe you've built and reconfigured your own Windows computer. Maybe you've already installed Linux before and played around with the Linux operating system. Maybe you have a Mac at home that you use and you're already used to a lot of these utilities they talk about in the exam. If that's the case, Core 2 is going to feel a lot easier than Core 1 is, because you've already worked with these operating systems. You already know those terms. You already recognize those utilities we're talking about. You've already been through all of that. So for you, Core 2 is much easier. So everything is relative. Everything in these exams, of course, are relative, and it really often depends on what you have done in the past that makes them easier or harder than anything else. And I think a number of people look at it in a similar way, although I've heard people talk about, no, because the first exam has more memorization than the second part of the exam. I don't really know if that's true or not either. I think you have to memorize everything. I think rote memorization is something else, and that's something that we're seeing a lot less of on the exams these days. In fact, I saw people sort of complaining about this on a recent exam. I think they were complaining about the Network Plus exam. Maybe it was the A Plus exam, because CompTIA took out a lot of rote memorization on A Plus. That was something people complained about a lot, is that they would have a list of every wireless network type going back to the origin of 802.11. And you would have to know about 802.11a, 802.11b, 802.11g, 802.11n, 802.11ac, and 802.11ax. Well, in reality, if you ran into a wireless network today, it's probably going to be in AC or AX. It's going to be probably one of the last three on that list. You're never going to run into an 802.11a, b, or g. Probably not. Certainly not A and certainly not B. You won't run into those anywhere. They simply don't exist anymore. You probably, I guess if you suddenly walked into an ancient data center that, creaky door that nobody had been into in 10 years and there's dust everywhere, okay, maybe there you might see a G, but that's not what I'm talking about. And on a practical production network, you're probably going to see one of those last three. So why would CompTIA ask you about all these detailed statistics about all of those? Well, CompTIA agreed with you and said, okay, let's take that off the exam. Now you just need to understand that there are differences in wireless standards, and those differences involve security and frequencies. That's sort of where they changed this to. Well, now, because you can't make everyone happy, there's now a group of folks that are taking the newer exam and say, wait, what happened to all the memorization? I need to memorize everything about all of these different exams. So which ones do I need to memorize again? And they go off scope. They go outside the scope of the exam objectives, and they're now focused. They're so used to going through rote memorization that now that they've removed the rote memorization, they don't like that. They're putting it back in themselves. Even though CompTIA has plainly spelled out in their exam objectives, you don't need to know that. In fact, we intentionally removed it so that you don't have to do that. And I think people are they're so locked into that mode. No, I must memorize statistics. Give me more statistics to memorize. But as CompTIA has told you, and as you can see on the exam, they're not asking you about statistics on the exam. They never asked a question. In 802.11a, what frequency was used? Very rarely would you ever see a question like that. Instead, it would be more of a scenario. A network administrator has installed 802.11a access points that are able to, that are having a conflict with other access points in the same building. What options are available to resolve that? And you would have to know, oh, well, they're running 802.11a or 802.11b, and they're running these frequencies. So that's where the problem is. So we need to run this so that we can avoid those frequency issues. So they build it into more of a story, into a scenario on the exam. So if they're not asking you about the rote memorization, why are you insisting that you learn something via rote memorization? So CompTIA got rid of it. They took it off the exam, and I think rightly so. I think it's a better exam set of objectives that doesn't focus on ones and zeros. It's a much broader picture. How do we use these wireless networks? What do we look for when we're configuring a wireless network? What type of options are available when configuring a wireless network? So instead of memorizing ridiculous statistics about IEEE standards, we are instead memorizing much more important information about how you would manage these on a more global basis, on a broader basis. Still memorization is still things you need to know, but it's not that rote set of A, B, G, N, and going through all of that again. I think it's a pretty good thing myself. And hopefully you think it's a good thing as well. I think most of us do think that is a good thing, but there's some people out there that really like that rote memorization part. They were begging for it. No, we want more. Oh, maybe this isn't the exam for you. If all you want to do is put a bunch of statistics in your mind and have those statistics come out of your brain, there's a better way to do this. There's a more functional way to learn this content. And I think learning it at a broader perspective and how to apply these detailed pieces of information are much more important when you get into an actual job where you are administering these systems. If we need to know rote memorization type stats, we simply look them up. And that was the argument a lot of people gave. Why am I memorizing frequencies for 802.11a? I'm never going to see A. If I need these statistics for some reason, I can just look them up. And nobody memorizes these and keeps them in their brain for their normal day-to-day. And they're absolutely right. They're absolutely correct. So why wouldn't we change? And they did. They changed the exam. They made it better. And now I think we do have a better A+ exam because of that. Let's keep going through the list. We've got some time, so we can go through. If you'd like to submit a question at any time, you can do that. It can be a question about anything. It could be a question about technology. It could be a question about the weather. It'd be a question about CompTIA. Links on your screen. Go to professormaster.com/QA to submit your question. Let's go through am I ready questions. I love this question. I like it when people are getting ready for an exam. It's getting exciting. So again, a question that comes to us, again, my good friend Anonymous working overtime. The question that Anonymous asks is, I've been studying for about a week or so, took cybersecurity and hardware classes in high school. Okay, well, that makes sense then. Getting high 80% on the practice exam. So here's a great example how I mentioned that depending on where your experience is, you might find the exams easier or harder than someone else. So let's say you took classes on cybersecurity, whatever that is. You took classes on hardware. First, what high school you're going to that has cybersecurity classes and hardware, that's pretty awesome. I love that there's schools in the primary and secondary school system in our country, or wherever this is, that are learning about cybersecurity and hardware. Schools hate to talk about cybersecurity. They think the kids are going to use it against them. Well, they're perhaps not wrong, but it is important information to know. And I love that, by the way. So that's great. So imagine going through a school year, you've done nothing but cybersecurity and hardware. Well, I would say Core 1 is going to be pretty easy for you. Maybe a lot of Core 2 is as well. And if you're getting high 80% on the practice exams, that certainly is a good sign, but it's not enough. The question asks, am I ready? And let me tell you, this is a question I get in many different forms. There was a question on our chat in our Discord yesterday where someone said, I have an exam in an hour. What do I need to study? Okay, an hour, I can't help you very much. There's not much you can do in an hour. But about a week before you take your exam, there's a lot you can do. So if you wanted to go into what I call the final study mode, you've been through this video course, maybe you've read a book, maybe you've done some labs, maybe you've spent some time and gone through my Q&A, you've really sat down and you've gotten good numbers, you've got a high 80% on the practice exams, and you've really spent time on those core study features. You've gone through video, books, labs, and practice exams. But are you ready for the exam? I think at that point, about a week before your exam is a good time to shift into a get ready for the exam mode. And I think one of the best things you can do, even if you've been through every single video, every minute of every video, you've read one or more books on the topic, you have gone through lab upon lab upon lab, and you've gone through practice exam upon practice exam and gone through all 3 practice exams for that. But are you really ready? There's really only one way to know, and that's to go through a comprehensive list of every possible thing that you would need to know for this exam. That's right. It's the exam objectives. This is the best checklist that you can use before you start your studies. But in many ways, this is the best checklist to have after you're done with your studies. So I'm going to scroll through and tell you how I think this should be done. fact, I kind of started this. I'm going to start a different section that's not marked up. Let's say you're working through just go through this document, every single bullet in this document, and be able to explain to yourself or to someone else what that is referring to. Some people refer to this as the rubber duck method. Some people refer to this as the mirror method, because you're explaining to yourself in the mirror, or explaining to a rubber ducky, you're explaining to a stuffed animal what this means. So let's take this one. Now, I will say there are sections in this one I think are important to bring up, because there's a section on here that talks about Windows 10 editions for Home, Pro, Pro for Workstations, and Enterprise. You may be thinking to yourself, you may be saying to yourself right now, this is not my beautiful house. I do not recall Windows 10 being anything close to being available now. Didn't Windows 10 end of life? Why is it in the exam objectives? Well, that's because when the exam came out, Windows 10 was still active. It had not hit its end of life. But as they say in the exam objectives themselves, note on Windows 11, versions of Microsoft Windows that are not end of mainstream support, as determined by Microsoft, up to and including Windows 11, are intended content areas of the certification. That's it. Which means that if something is at end of mainstream support, that's what Microsoft calls their primary support for an operating system. If you're not in mainstream support, you no longer receive security patches and no other updates for the operating system. And last year, I think it was October, right, of 2025, Windows 10 went out of mainstream support. It is no longer in mainstream support. And as CompTIA says, versions of Microsoft Windows that are not in mainstream support are intended content areas, which means if they are now finally out of support, they're not part of these exam objectives anymore. So if you see anything in the objectives that are talking about Windows, they're talking about Windows 11. Unless there's something very specifically written that says Windows 10, in which case you can exclude that because now Windows 10 is no longer in mainstream support. So you can effectively ignore anything that is specific to Windows 10 in the exam. But you still need to know Windows 11 editions such as Home, Pro, and Enterprise. Well, what are those? The Home one you can kind of guess. The Pro one you can sort of guess. Enterprise you sort of know what it is. But what are the real differences between those? Now, fortunately, they kind of give you a place where you can start differentiating between these, because the next section, as they explain, you need to know what N versions are. That's not a bad word. That's N. That's the letter N. That's in version. I'm not trying to it's not a thing. It's in. The version number is N. That's the version after M. You see what I'm saying? There's also feature differences, domain versus workgroup, desktop styles, user interface, availability of remote desktop protocol, random access memory limitations, BitLocker, and GPEdit. They're giving you some differentiation. So you can say Windows 11 Home, do you have those? Windows 11 Pro, do you have those? Windows 11 Enterprise, do you have those? And how does that N version, which is a European version, how does that fit into all of this? Then upgrade paths is a separate set of topics. What is an in-place upgrade? When do you use it? What is a clean install? When would you use it? And hardware requirements. What is a trusted platform module, or TPM? What is a unified extensible firmware interface, or UEFI? These are things you have to know just for this section. So this is where you got a week left on your exam. Go through this list. If it's something I'm good. I know my Windows 11 editions very well, so I'm going to turn some annotation on. And I'm going to say Windows 11, I know super well. Maybe I'm going to turn annotation on. Do I want it? Maybe I'll put it in a different color. No, green is what I want. So I'm not going to be able to mark it up because I did an edit earlier in here. And so you can mark these. I did this in my first section. So if you know it really well, mark it in green. If you sort of know it, okay, you can kind of explain to somebody, but you really feel that I don't know it as well as I really should. I marked it in yellow. And if you're going through and you really can't explain this topic to yourself or someone else, you really don't know it as well as you should, you can mark it in red. Now, you can do other things as well. If you're more between 1 and 10 and you want to do it that way, give a little more granularity, you can mark each of these with 1 through 10. And you can annotate right on your PDF if that's what you'd like to do. Red, yellow, green worked for me, but find the one that works for you, and that works perfectly fine as well. When you're done, you will have an entire document colored in red, yellow, and green, or numbered 1 through 10. And now you can start with the red, or start with the number 1s or number 10s, depending on which way you did that. Start with your red and study the red stuff, because those are the things you know the least about. So learn everything you can about Linux. Then go to the next one, learn everything you can about remote network installation. Then go to the next section, learn everything you can about every red thing there. That's the low-hanging fruit. Those are the things you should do first. Once you go through all the red stuff and you've moved the reds into kind of the green area, now you can go back through your list and hit the yellows. Hit the yellow ones, find everything you marked in yellow, do the yellow ones next. Why would you go study the green things when you've proven to yourself that you can explain why those green topics are important? Maybe go through them last if you want to go through them at all. But if you want to really focus on where your shortcomings are, the things you missed, the things you don't know well enough, you have to be very honest with yourself going through this for the first time. That can be painful. You're thinking, oh, there's too much red here. My screen is bleeding with all the red. But at least it's honest. And you're now really get an understanding. In fact, you might look at this and say, I thought I was going to take this in 7 days. I'm going to change my appointment right now to be 14 days, to be 21 days out. Going to change it maybe a couple weeks ahead. Now, remember, you can update and change your schedule for your exam 24 hours before it occurs. So even if you've already booked your exam and you're thinking, oh, a week, after looking at this, there's no way, log on and change it. You can change it in a matter of minutes and you're good. I will tell you, this is an important safety tip, by the way. If you are changing the schedule for your exam and you're going online, you're typing it in, they're giving you a schedule, you're choosing that schedule date, there's something about that UI online that is not registering the change for people. This is something that's been going on for months, and it is still happening. I'm still seeing reports as late as this week. Somebody is still running into these problems where they go online, change the date, they log off, but it didn't actually change. And then when they're ready to take their exam 2 weeks from that point and they log back in, it's not listed anywhere. And they look at the details and it shows that 2 weeks ago they were a no-show and their voucher is no longer good and they've now got to buy a new voucher. That is not the place you want to be. That is not a good thing. So if you make a change to your schedule, change it online, log out, immediately log back in, confirm the changes in there, take a screenshot, take a view of, if you got an email, save the email. Make sure you get some type of confirmation that you really, really, really did change the date, because I don't know what it is about that system. I don't know if it's a bug. I don't know if it's just a weird thing in the UI. I don't know if there's one more submit button you have to push. I don't know, but it's happening to more than one person. So I'm passing along these stories that I am hearing, and these sad stories in many cases, because people have to buy a new voucher when this occurs. So that can maybe save you hundreds of dollars. Just that one little tip. Just keep that in mind, because you can run into that problem. I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's get another question in before we're done for today, though. Wouldn't that be nice? Fit a little more in here and being able to work through it. Let's do these. Absolutely. So there's so much here working through these questions. Lots to go through. Let me see if I can find something that is in the list of these. I think I do have these. So much that's here. We talked a little bit about preparing for the exam and going through the exam objectives. People tend to focus on practice exams, and I understand why, because they are incredibly valuable. One of the things I see people perhaps doing wrong with practice exams is they only do practice exams. And I think they are trying to kind of learn backwards in a reverse way, and in a way that's not going to give them the context they need. And let me explain why. The question here is from Henry, who asks, what's the recommended score on practice exams before taking the real thing? And everybody's going to have a different opinion here because, as I mentioned earlier, the practice exams, or the way the exam, the official exam is graded, the way the actual exam is graded is unknown. CompTIA doesn't share their grading method. Well, that's a challenge there in itself, isn't it? If you don't know how the exam is graded, how are you supposed to duplicate that in a practice form? And the answer is you can't. There's no way to do it. If you don't know how the exams are graded, how am I supposed to give you some type of way to do that? So what we do is we estimate. I think it's a good estimation. It's something we spend a lot of time looking at and thinking about and examining and testing and comparing against what we are seeing out there. But inside of my practice exam book, I actually have a section on how to use this book. And I have a lot of things that give you an example of things you can do and how you would. A lot of this we did already when I showed you how to use the exams. But I have inside the book how to score the practice exams. And I give you I sort of explain to you, there's no way to exactly duplicate the scoring that CompTIA provides, and there never will be. But I have a pretty good scale here, a scoring chart, where I say, if you get less than 70%, you're not ready yet. If you get between 70 and 80, you're getting there. You're very close. Between 80 and 90, very, very strong. But then over 90, I think you're ready for the real thing. Now, those numbers are broad generalizations, to be sure. I mean, I even did these on the zeros, 70, 80, 90. So I really kept it in something we could at least visualize and keep in our minds and be able as humans to be able to understand where that goes. But another part of this is those are pretty accurate to the results people are seeing on the exam. Because people often say, well, I did the Professor Messer exams, I got an 80, and here's the score I got. And they may have just gotten over the line. If they had to earn a 700, they did a 705. Which I like to say they studied exactly the right amount. I think if that's the way it goes, you pass either way. If you get a perfect score, you pass the exam. If you get the exact score you need to pass, if you get a 700, you pass the exam. If you get an 800, you also pass the exam. There's no difference. The person who got the 700 is just as much A+ certified as someone who got a perfect score, because it's a pass-fail certification exam, like most industry certification exams are. So I tell people, don't worry so much about striving for a perfect score. You really just need the minimum score. And if you can do well above that, then you've got some safety net built into this. And I think if you get over 90% on my practice exams, I think that's a good safety net. Could you make it at 80%? You probably could. And I say it's a strong showing, but it might be good to have some extra points on your exam. That might really, really help you quite a bit. It's all subjective. It's all up to the individual in many cases. This is not something that you can easily correlate directly back, but I think we come pretty close with those numbers. So that's what we're doing. If you're looking for an exact, no, I need to know, is it 82.7%? I need to know the exact number. We don't have it. We'll never have it. CompTIA will never provide us with this information. It is one of those mysteries of life that we will go through our entire, to the end of our ages, and we will leave this earth never knowing how CompTIA scored this exam. We will just never know. We don't understand how the universe was created for sure. We don't know exactly. We don't know exactly why the sky is blue. We have some understanding, but I think, how does this weird thing work with science? Well, we have to learn more about the science. We're going to have to learn more about the grading to ever know what the answer to that might be. Otherwise, it's just going to be a mystery of the universe, and we'll never be able to pull that one out. But I think that's one of those cases, though, where knowing the details of it are not as important as you just learning the material. just learn the content. Again, we sort of get wrapped up in the mechanics a lot of times. We're technical people. We like to solve problems. That's why we're doing this. That's why we like this line of work. We're presented with a problem, with a quiz, with something we got to fix, and then we figure out the reason. We solve the problem. We get the dopamine hit, and we go to the next problem. We love doing that. We love solving the problems and making that happen. So this is one that we wish we could solve that problem. I just need to learn how they grade the exam. If I could just solve that problem, you're just going to have to let that one go. That's just one of, it's so difficult though, isn't it? You don't want to let it go, but you sort of do. It's one of those, but we can come close based on feedback we're getting, based on the results people are seeing, based on what the numbers are that they're seeing on their practice exams versus their final exams. I pay attention to these things. And I started correlating some of that together. It's not a perfect correlation. I'm not intending it to be, but it comes really close. And I think it's a good set of bars that you can work towards. Obviously, you want 100%. That's not practical. 90%, that's a pretty good number. You're pretty well locked in at that point with 90%. And I think that might be a good place to go if you're ever trying to figure out, based on this practice exam, I got a 90%. Am I ready? Absolutely. I got 85%. Yeah, you could probably take it at 85, but that's up to you, knowing that there probably is a little bit more you could put in the tank. You could put a little bit more of a buffer there that might protect you. So just another idea of things you might want to consider if you're planning to take my set of practice exams or really anybody's practice exams. I think those are good numbers regardless of what you would do, but you want to take mine, right? Of course you do. That's where that comes from. Well, I think that's probably a good place to finish up today. That's a good 2 hours of Q&A. Thank you so much for being here in that first hour and answering those brand new questions. We have new questions for you next month. So come on back for the next study group next month, and I'll have a whole new set of questions for you as we do every single time. We also have our Network Plus study group Friday of next week, almost a week and a day from today, exactly a week and a day from today. And then we've got our Security Plus study group the week after that. We'd love for you to come back and join us for those as well. Don't forget that all of these study groups are available for replay on our YouTube channel. You can watch through every single one of those. And as I've mentioned, every time it's a different set of questions. There's quite a bit to learn if you're studying for your Core 1 or your Core 2 exams, along with a new performance-based question every month. Well, I think that brings us to the end of another successful study group, and it's successful because you were here. Thank you so much for joining us, taking time out of your day. It really does mean a lot to us, and it really does give us a little bit more motivation to keep doing and making these, just to keep this process going. We're going to have a lot more to do in the coming months. There's a lot more to go through with A+, and we will be right here to help you through the process. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group.